The book. Come to us.
Modi.
No. Pro-Muslim. He's Hindu.
Salman Rushdie or something like that.
No. Dr. Shashi Tharoor, that's his name. Dr. Shashi Tharoor. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You're watching Newcastle Fast FM. This is the Late Show live, as we are every evening on throughout the month of Ramadan, midnight. Well, about 25 past 12. But we're running a little bit late, but we're going to be on for about an hour, inshallah, to talk about some very important topics. So tonight's topic is going to be a multitude of things. We're going to touch upon a few things. We're going to talk about inferiority complexes. We're going to talk about Bangladesh. We're going to talk about Islam as a universal religion. We're going to talk about so many different things, yeah? So let's kickstart the program with the co-host, Brother Jamaal. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, AT and everyone else. Hope you're all well, inshallah. Looking forward to another very informative and interesting show.
I hope I'm going to get a lot of interaction from you on this topic, Jamaal, of inferiority complexes.
Yeah, I just can't help myself. Most of the time when I hear you guys chatting, I just get really so lounged, relaxed, and I just take in a lot of the content. But today, yeah, I think I'll have more to say regarding this.
Bro, you're in your armchair today, yeah? So you should be getting more involved now.
I'm actually not in the armchair. I've been decorating today. I'm actually just popped up in a little corner.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, but alhamdulillah, good to go. Ready to go, inshallah.
Good, and we have our other co-host for tonight. In place of Salahuddin Patel, we've got Joni. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you, bro?
Good, bro. Good. Alhamdulillah. Excited for the topic. It's one of your favorite, I know. So let's see.
You've replaced the Indian, yeah?
Yeah, always, bro. Happily.
Alhamdulillah. All right, and we also have our guest for tonight's show, same as last night, Abdul-Haq Ashanti. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa barakatuh.
How you doing, Abdul-Haq?
Alhamdulillah.
Bro, yesterday we talked about quite a few things on white, so we're continuing the conversation of white supremacist extremism, and we in fact really yesterday we didn't talk about that. We talked more about Islam's solution to racism. That was the main topic of yesterday, looking at from an Islamic perspective how from the religion, from the foundation, Islam deals with the issue of racism in such a holistic manner, where it transcends beyond borders and nations and color and ethnicity and so on and so forth. So we had quite an insightful discussion on that yesterday. And I think today we're going to spend a little bit more time, or we're going to build off that, inshallah, and talk about Islam as a universal religion for everybody. Okay, and one thing I do want to talk about is from a Muslim perspective, about this issue of having these inferiority complexes. Now I know Joni and Jamaal have got quite a lot to talk about this, inshallah. So let's kickstart with that, as the inferiority complex. And I think there's a good book on this. I don't have it at hand with me, but there's a book called The Good Immigrant. I don't know if you've heard about this book or read it. Essentially, it's the idea that if you're an immigrant into a country, you should assimilate, and as long as you're assimilating, then you're okay. You can stay here. It's almost like as long as you be our servant, the servant class, then it's okay for you to be here. But as soon as you want to try and bring your own identity to the table, then it's so acceptable. Then we're going to oppose you. And if you think about this, people like Tommy Robinson, he will come out with similar sentiments of, oh, well, Muslims are like this, and he's always harping on about Muslims, and he claims it's about radical Muslims only. But the reality is, when you hear him in some of his talks, when you listen to some of the things that he says and some of the comments he slips with, he'll come out with something like, oh well, I don't have a problem with all Muslims. Some of my friends are Muslims. He'll come out with that sort of language, and he'll say, yeah, the Muslims that come with me to the clubs and they drink and they do this and they do that, they're the ones that are okay, and this is that whole good immigrant mentality of, as long as you conform to my standard, then and way of living, then you're all right. There's no room for people to have their own identity. Whereas in our tradition, Islamically, we touched upon this in one of our previous sessions, when you look at Islamic history, people were able to maintain their own identity. They weren't forced to convert. They weren't forced to conform to certain things. If you look at Muslim Spain, for example, you would have Jews and Christians who would maintain their identities yet contribute to Spanish society or Muslim society in Spain. If you fast forward and look at the Balkans region under the Ottomans, they were able to maintain their identity and their places of worship, and be able to practice their way of life without being forced to conform, but at the same time without compromising the Islamic values and principles. 16th century Baghdad, for example, you saw a whole host of people who were able to have meaningful conversations and keep their identities, but at the same time contribute to society, regardless of what their backgrounds are from. So the idea of this inferiority complex, and for those who want to know what an inferiority complex is, then I guess that the easiest way to define this would probably be, a feeling of inadequacy, right, about yourself. And that can be caused by, I don't know, being in a certain environment, I guess. And then that can also lead to some form of aggressive behavior as well, which is linked to that. But the idea that, you are not enough, or that you have to try and be like something else or someone else, or conform to being like something else and assimilate, I guess, leads to this superiority and inferiority complex. So we talked a lot about superiority complexes in last weekend's session, but we haven't really touched upon inferiority complexes on the flip side to it all. So I think let's open up this discussion. Who wants to go first? Abdul-Haq, go for it, bro.
Bismillah, salatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man yattabihum bi ihsanin ila yawm ad-din, amma ba'd. Okay, I'm going to say something a little bit controversial here, which is that actually, I think as Muslims, we are supposed to have an inferiority complex.
Why?
Let me just say that from the outset. We absolutely should have an inferiority complex.
Explain.
Inferiority complex unto whom? When we
Allah.
unto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the first thing.
Yes.
We are supposed to have an inferiority complex because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who created us for a noble purpose, as we discussed yesterday. وَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. Worship Allah, do not associate anything with Him. So that the only being who Muslims we're supposed to have an inferiority complex to is our Lord and Creator, when He created us. Because Allah says, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. There's nothing like unto Allah, and He is the or hearing, the or seeing. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one really we should have an inferiority complex towards. And what a noble inferiority complex that is. But as with regards to now the issue which you were alluding to, Abu Tayeb, is now with regards to people among ourselves.
Yeah, the inferiority complex towards other people.
Yeah. And this is where there's a myriad of issues which we could discuss here today. The Prophet mentioned also in the hadith, Man tashabbaha biqawmin fahuwa minhum. Whoever imitates a people, he is from them. And that means in a number of ways. That could be imitating a people in terms of their attire, because usually that's what they say, isn't it? Even there's that saying, well-known saying in English, that imitation is the best form of flattery. You see what I'm saying?
They
But the
also
problem,
say an imitation is not as good as the original.
yeah, the problem is when it's all well and good for someone if someone's copying noble and honorable characteristics from a people. But what we're finding, as you were alluding to, is that people will imitate the most base and the most vile and the most evil traits and characteristics from other peoples. This is where there are a lot of negative aspects in that kind of imitation, and also then it creeps into that imitation largely is due to could be feelings of inferiority. And usually, it's, in some of these reasons, if you're looking at it deep, in a deep way, in a critical way, Abu Tayeb, a lot of these. Why are there these inferiority complexes? You've lived overseas. And you've probably seen that yourself. I've seen certain things myself.
Are we talking about living in the UK specifically, or are we talking about globally?
No, I'm talking about globally. If you look, let's look at it from global, an international way. I mean, you've mentioned a lot about imperialism and colonialism, and I think that has fed into a lot of complexes with regards to feelings of inferiority. I think what also have the colonial period in particular. When you study and read history, it brought to the fore the gap, the technological gap, which you could say that kind of began within the Muslim realm, that began during the time of the Ottoman Empire, and hence they had a lot of reforms. They had the Tanzimat reform movements, and they had many other sort of reforms, starting from probably could say like the 17th century, the capitulation system, for example, where in the Ottoman Empire, non-Muslims were allowed to. European traders were outside the realm of governmental and judicial control. That was could say. So these little things you could start seeing even from the time of the Ottoman Empire, where they started to imitate the military military notions which they developed from the French or from the Prussians at the time. Indeed, the Ottoman Empire, when they were in some of their battles against other Muslims, they would actually draft in the support of Prussian military advisors, which what the Ottomans did when they had Heinrich von Moltke. He was a Prussian military expert. He was drafted in by the Ottomans to help them in certain instances in history, like when they had the problems with Muhammad Ali Pasha, who was the Egyptian vassal leader of Albanian origin, who's the Egyptian vassal leader over Egypt. So this is, and then when the Ottomans started to bring in certain reforms and certain look to Europe and European, not just the military systems, but political systems, you could see from here. So I'm saying this is where you could say the large traits of this inferiority came in, exacerbated by, we're looking at history, when the French attacked Egypt under Napoleon as well, which emphasized that was a shock to the Muslim world at the time, and a shock specifically to the Ottoman Empire, to Egypt at the time, and that led them to look at restructure how they do things. So you could start to say, you could say that it started to, the notion of inferiority began from this period, and then was sort of really blown up during colonialism. And there are many battles which happened during colonialism where the superior firepower of Europe totally decimated the indigenous peoples of different parts of the world, and this is also which led to the subjugated nations, the defeated nations. Obviously, they're gonna have feelings, a sense of inferiority. What has happened to us? What can be done, and so forth. So it's very complex, very deep when you start looking at it. If you're going back further into how notions of inferiority have crept in, Abu Tayeb, I think. You see what I'm saying? So I think that's a good starting point to look at.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's also a number of things. Yeah, sorry, go on, carry on, Abdul-Haq.
Yeah, so I think that's a good starting point when we're looking at the inferiority complexes. Like historically, from a historical perspective, you see what I'm saying? There are
Yeah,
many
we
deep
can
and
start
complex
historically.
factors, you see what I'm saying, which led to the notions and feelings of why does this nation, why do this people look have this sense of inferiority compared to others? It's usually largely now in the modern context, usually largely inferiority to the European nations or other Western powers. It's usually due to technological advancements. You see what I'm saying?
That's what the argument is. We're superior because we have technological advancements, and we have innovation, and we have civilization, and we've economic powers, and so on and so forth, economic stability. But what they fail to highlight is how they got there, how they got to these positions, right? On the backs of who did they get these
Exactly.
positions,
Exactly. It's
right?
a good point what you're saying. A lot of it's all well and good someone saying, those people just stuck in the 18th century,
They're
second
still
and
swinging
19th
off
century.
trees and stuff, yeah, that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
it's and some of them look at them, some of them look at some of them what they believe in. They're still stuck in the Middle Ages. It's complete nonsense and totally. They're not judging with a fair scale, the fair balance,
Of course not.
because as you correctly mentioned, look at the plundering of these nations, plundering of Africa and Asia, the plundering, the decimation, the chicanery and deception, wherein which many natural resources and so forth were taken, via deception and chicanery. You have to include all of that in there. It's not it wasn't just like simply that they've just got this superior. There was blatant deception, chicanery, and cheating and lying
Yeah, of
utilized
course.
in some of that in history. So
There's no doubt.
now I think this is what some of these people they don't assess. Not just that. I remember speaking to one of the brothers as well about this. They kind of they use a lot of there's a lot of historical amnesia. As you said, how did they arrive to that situation? A lot of historical amnesia.
Well, historical amnesia from the Western powers, as it were, but also historical amnesia from the people of those countries as well. And in fact, I would argue a colonized mindset that comes with it as well. That is there's a level of acceptance. Yeah, they came, but yes, they may have taken our resources, but you know what? They gave us democracy. They gave us trains. This is what I heard one of the people from one of the politicians in India say. Yeah, when the British were here, it was a good thing for Indians because we got a level of civilization. They put the trains in place. They gave us the train infrastructure, and they gave us civilization and blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, okay, but that still doesn't make sense. They gave us democracy. Yeah, and Dr. Shashi Tharoor talks about this in his book Inglorious Empire. It's actually really good. And he did the Oxford Union. He made, in an interview, he was saying, well, yeah, if you wanted to give democracy, you didn't have to rape and loot us for it. You could have just given us it, right? Why should we accept the idea that you have to rape and loot and destroy and annihilate and kill us and torture us for us to be able to get democracy or to get the train system, right? You could have just given us the train system, or you could have sold it to us, right? You didn't have to exploit us to be able to give this.
Because
this is the colonized mindset that I'm talking about.
In fact, though, I don't think it was as magnanimous as that claim. So the assertion that it was just to bring in, just to spread democracy, I think that's
a byproduct of it. It wasn't.
Yeah, it's just that's pure. That's just pure sanctimony. They didn't have that. They didn't have such magnanimous aims.
Of course not.
I'm sorry, but the East India Company didn't have such a magnanimous aim to spread freedom and democracy. That wasn't the aim. The aim is let's just get as much resources, how much tea and so
simple as that.
Get from, or how much cocoa we could get from West Africa, how much tea we could get from India, and how much resources.
But the funny thing is,
in order to fund and support the Industrial Revolution, which was going on,
exactly.
It had absolutely nothing to do with the magnanimous claim of spreading democracy.
Yeah. When you look at the concept of the inferiority complex in terms of how someone is made to feel inferior, I mean, there's a brilliance in the way that a nation or a people could, sit down and study the rest of the world or other nationalities and find ways of making them feel that they need them, that they're lesser than them, and this kind of ideological sort of methodology it's one which is incredible, because for someone to feel like they are themselves are insignificant or inferior to somebody else, there's a brilliance, and there's no doubt about it. So even when you look at the nations, African nations and so on, who have allowed certain things to happen like over history, and obviously today you'd want to just slap them and say, like, how the hell did you allow yourself to become like this? But it's not because they were stupid or whatever, but it's just the brilliance of in the evil, if you like, of someone who's going to subjugate someone to such kind of hell, and over history.
It's the best form of control, isn't it?
It is.
When you've got somebody who feels inferior to you, then whatever you say to them, they will accept and they will follow.
Yeah, and it doesn't come overnight either.
Nah, of course not.
It doesn't come overnight. It comes over a period of time of just. And as I said, it's like the studying of the people, which no one else does. Everyone else takes it for granted that you take them on the face value. Okay, this seems to be a decent person, but they're watching you, they're studying you, and they've found ways of making you feel like, okay, you need us, you need this, and therefore we're going to help you, and whatever. So as you mentioned, democracy, that's one of the ways of it happening as well. But I just think it's something that I've looked at over a long time, and I just think it's brilliant, and it's the way that Shaitan works as well. Shaitan his mind is brilliant in that way as well.
Yes,
that's interesting, because we talked about like even Abdul-Haq mentioned about the British East Indian company, tea company, when they went to India. They didn't have these intentions of, oh yeah, we're going to bring democracy to them, or we'll build a train infrastructure to benefit the people. No, the trains were built. This is, again, the colonized mindset saying, oh yeah, well, they left us with something good. No, but that wasn't the intention of them making the trains. It was for them to transport their goods for their industrial revolution, for their trade. You just happened to be a byproduct of that, to be able to benefit from it afterwards, after they'd left, right? Or towards the end of when they were there. But the point is this: even the Industrial Revolution, there was an Indian politician, brilliant. He came out with something really, really thought-provoking, actually. They were at some sort of G20 summit on the environment and stuff. And there was basically saying China and India are the biggest contributors to pollution, blah, 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 because of X, Y, Z. And he turned around and he said, listen, and he's talking to the European and the British in particular, but the European powers in general. He said, listen, you guys went through your industrial revolution. Nobody complained about your pollution and environmental issues. Let us go through our industrial revolution to increase our economy. Let us have that level playing field when it comes to trade and economy, like you guys are on. So sometimes I even think some of these issues are highlighted and over-highlighted, overstated, in order to keep certain nations superior in terms of economy and technology, and keep others below, right? Keep them lower. So I think it's a big issue that you've got these things. And then again, of course, you've got people who say about slavery, which we're going to talk about next weekend anyway. But then you have to remember the history behind it. Certain European countries and nations were at the forefront of the slave trade. And then they have the audacity to complain about others who were involved in it, or who are involved in it. So there's a lot of double standards here, which doesn't wash right with me. And when we look at it from that perspective, we have to challenge that and say, hold on a minute, what you're saying, it may well be true, but the double standards doesn't sit right with me. Yeah, you can't turn around and say, because we shouldn't have this colonized mindset and this inferiority complex just to take everything for face value. We have to challenge certain things. And if you look at the Indian subcontinent as an example, when the rape, they're quoting figures like 46 trillion pounds worth of economy. Dr. Shashi Tharoor talks about this, and this is what I like about him. He's not scared to talk about these things. He's not scared to expose the realities of empire and things like that. He wrote a whole book on it, and he makes the point. He said it wasn't just a case of them coming in and taking and then leaving. It was a case of coming in, annihilating, destroying, and deconstructing, breaking apart the current economy system that was there, so that they would have to be inferior, and they had to rely on on the British at the time, right? It wasn't just a case of coming in and doing it, but the thing is that the people accepted it. You got to understand this point. How is it that 36,000 British personnel ruled over a country and occupied and ruled and colonized a country of 300 million people at the time? It doesn't make sense if you look at it just purely from numerical value. Doesn't make sense. It's because of the colonized mindset, the inferiority complex, that these guys are better than us. They're superior to us. They bought into that ideology. They're here to civilize us and show us how we should be living. Because in their mentality at the time, British Empire was, they're savages, they're backward, they don't have civilization, they don't know how to rule themselves. We've got to show them how to rule and govern, right? Even though India had civilization for centuries before the British Empire came, right? So this is the point. It's an ideological issue. It's an ideological enslavement and colonization of the mind, which has led to this type of thing being accepted. And there's a beautiful, I guess, yeah, basically, if you look at it from that perspective, you know, we need to deal with these inferiority complexes, because that leads on to the modern age now. So you mentioned the historical value to it, which is we need to define that, definitely. But how does it impact on us today? So when they turn around and say, when people turn around and say, oh yeah, we need a British version of Islam, we shouldn't have that inferiority complex to say, oh yeah, maybe we need to modernize Islam, or Islam needs to go through this Enlightenment period because the European countries went through it and look how they've prospered now, right? No, this is not how we work. We have a foundation, we have a religion, we have the Quran and the Sunnah. That is our prosperity. That is how we're going to get success, not by compromising those values just to appease somebody else who we think is more superior to us, right? And this is where I'm talking about the inferiority complex, or that we have to modernize, we have to liberalize, we have to go through that period of enlightenment. No, Islam doesn't need a period of enlightenment. Islam is enlightened. It's already at a position where it will, it is the natural way of life. It's in line with the fitrah, right? So these are some of the issues that I think I wanted to highlight when it comes to this inferiority complex. We shouldn't just roll over and accept that, you know, this British version of Islam is what's needed. No, challenge that. What do you mean by that? If you mean that there are certain fiqh issues that are related to minority Muslims living in Britain, then yeah, that's fine. But if you're talking about changing the religion to appease a certain group of people that is more palatable for them, then no, now you've got inferiority complex. You need to address that. Do you know what I'm saying, brothers? Yeah?
Yeah, definitely, bro. I mean, and that's it rolls over nicely into kind of you know, looking at Islam and you know, why do Muslims feel inferior? You know, what is it about, you know? Yeah, I mean, I think that's something which I'd really like to find out a little bit more about. Maybe Abdul-Haq can sort of enlighten us on that a bit as well, because you know, why are we so willing to, or so happy to sort of like to you know, to bend over backwards and also to compromise on our deen, you know, just as easy as that, just, you know, just quite happily.
Well, not only that, why we that is the key point here that you mentioned, Jamaal. Why are we so ready to compromise our deen and our principles, which we know are divinely inspired, which we know are from Allah? Why are we willing to compromise those things for who, right? And this is the point. We can go even further than that. Why are we willing to stand for 20 years of constant attack and abuse and bombardment from mainstream politicians, mainstream media, the far right, the neocon think tanks, all of these things that happen that we've been witnessing, living through? Why is it okay for us to be on the receiving end? Our children who were born 20 years ago opened up with their eyes, only knowing that they're under the spotlight and that they're the bad guys and they're the ones who are the you know, the ones who don't fit into our society. I mean, when we was growing up, Jamaal and Abdul-Haq, we went through the racism period, the overt racism period, being called a black this and a black that, and, you know, a Paki and whatever else. We went through all of that, the overt racism, when we were growing up. We shouldn't have had to deal with. In fact, when our parents came, they put up with it, right? But when the next generations were born, we didn't put up with it. We literally stood up to that. We fought against that, right? Because we weren't going to accept that type of nonsense. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because we didn't have that inferiority complex.
No, we didn't have it, and we were
Bro,
we grew up with them, whereas our parents didn't. They came and they were like strangers to them, so they were more willing to accept it. But then, because we grew up with them, we kind of understood them a little bit more. Yeah, so I mean, that's why we probably like were able to put up a fight a little bit more.
yeah, with the question like Abu Tayyib, bro, you said like why we are in this position. You know, Umar bin Khattab said like we are the people who Allah has honored us through Islam. If we seek Izzah through any other means, Allah will humiliate us. So this is this is the conscience. This is the answer here. So
Very
we
good
gone
point.
so far away from like because you know inferiority complex is a disease of the heart. So that all the disease require the treatment. So this has to be treated as well. So we need to recognize first. And I can say from my country, like I've been here like only 10 years now, more than 12 years almost. So I was growing up and I remember in school system, we used to read about the British people, how disciplined they're, how good they're. As a child, do you understand that in school I'm learning about the other people, they're better than us. I'm in school, I'm learning that they're teaching us like British people are so good. They have this manner, they have this and that. They accomplish so much. They contribute to your country so much. So I was growing up with that, you know. So and also, look, Alhamdulillah for Islam, and the Sheikh can just testify that I explain even better. Alhamdulillah for Islam that this is where the Islam comes. Look, when British went to our country, they annihilated us. They took everything that we had. But I think why it is wrong, like we cannot like because they could, that's what they did. But we let them in. We let them in because of our inferiority complex, whatever it is. But they didn't see it as a problem. They thought we have the power, we will take whatever they have. They if they had a correct belief, correct faith in God, they wouldn't do that because they could see that this is wrong. Slavery, this is wrong. Why you take it so long for people to understand that black life matters? Or any other people also human being, then we're not the only human being. So why did it take too long? Because they wanted the world to be unfair in their favor. You know what I mean? So they didn't care. So until I mean they got kicked out obviously, but that took centuries for a long time. So that's where the question comes, like when you have a correct faith like Islam, alhamdulillah, it tells us everybody is equal. You cannot take a right of your brothers even he is weak. So they didn't have the correct faith, and obviously they were not acting upon what was right. That's why Islam gives you the holistic view how you should live your life. This is a way of life. Alhamdulillah for that. I mean, that's why Allah says Islam is a complete way of life. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. And the reason why I'm mentioning all of these things is not just for the sake of just having a go at people and and everybody knows my views on British Empire. I'm not a fan of the British Empire or what they've achieved whatsoever, because it was at the expense of my people and other peoples around the world, which was detrimental to world economies, human life, and so on and so forth. But the point I'm making is, why am I talking about these inferiority complexes that we may have today, certainly in Britain, is because as Muslims, we shouldn't have to stand for all of these things that have been happening. We should have a voice. We should be able to claim a stake in society, that we can say, this is our identity, this is our contribution to British society, and it should be accepted. We shouldn't have pushback saying, oh yeah, no, you need to be like us, or you're trying to do this. Or we talked about this, the mood music, right? We talked about this last weekend. The mood music that's been created to otherize Muslims in particular and ethnic minorities in this country. It's always been there. It's that otherization that is part of the problem, which causes us to have an inferiority complex, and B, for others to have a superiority complex.
Yeah.
If we're going to talk about real equality, if you want to talk about equality, then we have to have those conversations about, okay, do Muslims have a stake in society with their identities or not? Like other people have stakes in the society with their identities.
Abu Tayyib.
Yes.
Yeah, I think if we're being if we're maintaining justice and upholding justice. I think that Muslims do, and Muslims are able. We are able to articulate that, especially in the UK. If we're if we're comparing it to other, I mean, to what else is going on in Europe, I think we do have a good stake. You see what I'm saying? We have to be fair in that regard. Other places in Europe are really, Muslims have no stake whatsoever.
That's true.
You see what I'm saying? If
But
we're looking at
just because others have less stake than we do doesn't mean we don't have a stake as well.
yeah, no, but I think if we are looking to our situation here, yeah, obviously there are. I think we do have a virulent. We have a virulent, as we discussed last week. There's a virulent, passionate, virulent block of individuals of individuals and a trend which we know that they're against they're against Muslims and Islam. They hate Islam. That particular block. And some of them, they articulate that, actually, as we've discussed. So I think we have issues from them, but I think they're the ones, definitely, we need to critique, refute, and speak out against. It's that kind of that sort of virulent, obnoxious block who I'd say the problem, really. But as for the other notions of say that Islam needs to be reformed and that kind of thing, well, no, because the religion's already been completed. Allah says the religion's already been completed. Al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum. This day I've completed your religion for you. Wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati. And perfected upon you my favor. Wa raditum lakum al-islamu dina. And I've chosen for you, and I'm pleased as Islam for religion for you. So that's sufficient. There's nothing else. There's no amendments needed, no additions needed, and no appendages need to be attached. So when those other notions do come in, I think it's due to some confusion. There is large inferiority complexes, you see. I think there's a bit of like shame and embarrassment. So you've seen these Muslims who get kind of embarrassed by Islam. They get embarrassed by, even wanting to practice Islam. You see this a lot in society. I've seen it so many times. People who are sort of embarrassed. They don't you want to give salams, or they're embarrassed to be identified as them. They've got obviously individuals like that. Yeah, they need to be educated. They have maybe some deep-seated inferiority complexes and notions. You've seen it. I've seen it. I'm sure the brothers have seen that.
Absolutely,
and that's where it becomes really problematic. And I think there's probably deep-seated issues there. I mean, you could say there's even maybe possible of a psychological issues there.
But I was going to say, sorry about that. It's interesting because over the years, over the decades as well, I guess, I don't know, the inferiority complex has been there for a long time, but now with the so-called war on terror, it's changed. It's become so much more sort of increased now, because all someone has to do is just throw the terrorist card at you or something like this, and you do not want to be associated with that. So then you distance yourself so much more from your deen that as you said, you start to change your name. You start to give yourselves nicknames and stuff like that because you don't want to be affiliated with that. So that's quite interesting as well, and interesting.
Hiding their Islam, essentially.
Hiding their Islam. And some people might even say that this is all part of the ideological kind of campaign, because it's something that you can just you just throw that card at someone and it's like, no, I'm not from that. So then you pray 5 times a day. Oh, you must be some form of extremist. So again, you have that inferiority complex that you don't want to kind of be open and about your deen, and it's quite dangerous.
Yeah, Jamal Bhai, I don't really believe that the people who actually shy away from their deen just because people will say something, I think they genuinely don't understand what Islam is all about, or they don't practice at all. If someone has a basic understanding of Islam and they practice, they will never shy away, because that's like the people, they don't want to call themselves Muhammad, they say Mo. That's like high level of inferiority complex. Or why would you do that? That's just because you're ignorant. You just don't know how to defend yourself. This is all about boil down to the education, and there is no cure for the ignorant than education. I'm like, this is just, I don't know. This is not acceptable. Why would you do that? They have no idea what Islam is all about.
I think what I've noticed, something which I've seen over the years, is that I think in the mind of those people, they seem to associate in their minds Islam with backwardness, or Islam with, as being sort of against progression. These individuals who I've seen before, I've seen people like that, but I've met people like that before in various parts of the world. Oh, why do you need? I remember and I was in a certain particular Muslim country, and I went for a job interview in that particular country to teach English. And they said, oh no, but you need to, sometimes the converts, they always go a bit overboard. It's okay, you don't need to have. So this is the individual's trying to sort of teach me. So it goes, oh no, at a job interview about appearance. Oh, it's okay. You can trim your beard. That's okay. You can, you don't need to, wear. So what I was in my mind, I was thinking, this individual is like, he really actually thinks he's sort of trying to educate me. Oh no, it's okay. You don't need to. It's okay. And I said to him, well, actually, the person who one of my teacher trainers wasn't a Muslim. He had a big ginger beard.
Yeah.
So if it's good for him, it's good for anyone else. But so in their mind, they associate. Seriously, this is the reality in certain parts of the Muslim world. Some individuals, some of these ignoramuses, in their mind, Islam is associated with sort of anti-progression, anti-modernity, anti-technology, and so forth, and these kind of things. So there's quite a lot of work, and a lot of dawah, and a lot of education needed to unravel all of that.
I've got a couple of comments here, and just before I go on to that, even we can extend that as well, Abdul-Haq. When you go to certain countries, Muslim countries, and they're looking for English teachers, for example, they have to be native English speakers. What they mean by that is they need to be white English teachers. That's the ones we want.
That's another big issue. But that's there's a lot of that. Obviously, if someone's, that's ridiculous. As long as someone's qualified and is native speaking on his tongue, then that's sufficient. But there is also an association, which some people have. Again, this is what I'm saying. There's an association game where they associate purely on the basis that the person could be actually, as not know English properly, absolutely terrible grammar. Absolutely terrible grammar, not fully cognizant of the English language whatsoever, but just purely on the basis of skin color, we'll get sort of a priority, and it's just due to this association game. I'm saying in the mind, and that is a real kind of clear example of, you could say, like a modern day inferiority kind of complex in action there, to be honest. It's like so many times, as you were saying, in certain countries, like when the or even like when one time I was asked to find some Brits who wanted to study somewhere, so I found some British brothers. And then the person said to me, "Oh no, but aren't there any sort of proper? What are proper Brits?" Come on, like respect. I said, come on. Those proper Brits. He said, "Well, where they're not. There's one. There's not many of them, and two, no, they don't want to. They're not interested in studying. The Brits who do want to study are these individuals here." And I think that's an issue. That's been an issue for.
Yeah, I've seen that a few times. Let me read some of the comments on my Facebook page, and then we'll go to the ones on the Fast FM one. So, Brother Ilyas, who was supposed to come on tonight, but we couldn't get him on, he says inferiority complex comes from various angles: lack of knowledge, which leads to a lack of convictions in words and actions; leaders who are ignorant, who are only concerned with their own benefits, without any care for the weakness and the weak ones. He also goes on to say inferiority complex also has influences of shaitan from top to bottom, thinking better than others, and waswas of Satan of doubt and desires, which affects our times those with whom claim knowledge. Too many examples to give. And this is the reality of our situation. Jamaal, do you want to read the comments from the top for the ones that have come on the Fast FM page, yeah?
Yeah, sure thing, bro. We're going to get them on the screen, I think. So we got Salam from a sister. Welcome, sound to have it. Muslim BB, growing up in school full of English white kids made me feel I wasn't good enough because I was different color of or religion. This still happens with kids these days. So how do kids overcome this?
Good question.
Very good question. Yeah.
What do you think, Jamaal?
Well, how do kids overcome this? This is those. Look, why don't they just take a leaf out of our book, as you mentioned earlier on, At, when we were growing up, and we grew up amongst them, and it was something that we were able to be more sort of resilient against it. Now, for the children now, I think it's a case of the parents really kind of really instilling that kind of confidence in the children, to make them understand that, you know, obviously, look, especially through our deen, you know, we are in a very prized position in life. You know, we have the wonderful religion of Islam, and just to be reminded of the great predecessors and what they went through to become what they became. And I think if children are reminded of things like this, it helps them. They feel actually a sense of, dare I say, pride, a sense of belonging. But without this, if we're not doing this for our children, then when they do go to school and when they're being educated, then they will naturally feel like they are not of the same degree or caliber of the people that are around them, and it's just simply not true. It's not true at all. He says it's harder now though, because there's cyberbullying and other types of bullying. I mean, like when it comes to cyberbullying now, that's something where, you know, maybe some of the older generation don't understand that fully. So then our children are kind of left to their own devices where they're experiencing the cyberbullying. But I guess it just needs to be a case of us becoming more aware of what's happening, so that we can again just let them understand that it's not about you know, how many likes you get. It's not about anything to do with that. It's about understanding yourself, because once someone understands themselves and where they came from and what they're a part of, then they will have that. So you see some children, they have this sense of real, you know, they feel really good about themselves and about their deen, and you know, they know about the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahabas and the companions that followed as well. And you know, subhanAllah, they're just completely different. And when I see children like that, it makes me feel really good to see them. It makes me feel really good, because you know, they're going to go in very good places, very high places. But yeah, it's about the parents educating the children and letting them understand that what they come from is something which is great.
And also, I would add to that, allowing the child to feel confident to be and encourage them to challenge these types of behaviors, you know, regardless whether it comes from teachers, whether it comes from other students, children. Be confident enough to challenge some of these things, because if you know your religion and somebody's saying something which is incorrect, you have the right to challenge that and argue the case and say that, no, that's not what this is about. This is what it is. You should be encourage the children to be able to challenge that. Let's go to the next comment. There's one here. Definition of inferiority complex. What's that comment? Yeah, that one that was just on there.
That's from us, I think. That's from
inferior, a feeling that you're not as good, as intelligent, attractive, etc. as other people. I mean, there's this brilliant comedy sketch by Amar Rahman. Have you seen that one about reverse racism? Yeah, if we can find it, we'll put it on there. But it's hilarious. It really does put things in context about this particular issue of, you know, physical attributes and traits. Anonymous, what's this one, Jamaal?
Yeah, from Anonymous. It's so true that some Muslims feel inferior to other Muslims. I've seen many Muslims from Asian background feel inferior to Muslims who are white or Arab. We were talking about that a little bit earlier on, and this was something that we were going to go into, I think, weren't we? In more depth.
Yeah, I mean, we can go straight into it now if you want.
Yeah,
I mean, we talked about the Muslim or inferiority complex to other people, especially from non-Muslims or other peoples. You know, even within our communities, there's this inferiority complex. You know that we have a serious problem of colorism. I'm very vocal about that. I've got no shame in talking about that, and no shame in challenging that as well. We have a serious problem within our communities the ethnic minority communities about colorism. The idea that white is better or more beautiful, the lighter skin that you are, and the more darker that you are, that you're somehow more uglier and less attractive, right? It's a serious problem. You know, this is something which is not acceptable. Where did you get these ideas from? This is nothing but the language of your colonial masters. This is nothing but the ideas and concepts from colonialism and slavery from the people who taught you this. It's nothing to do with.
But is it all from colonialism and slavery though? Isn't some of it also to do with some? Let's look at this for a little bit, because certain cultures within their own frames of reference, they do have an emphasis on that, but they do have where according in their cultures, just according to whatever's prevalent within. It's not always set in stone, but you do sort of find that there is this notion where that yes, the one who is who's whiter is more beautiful. There's a kind of like a kind of a subtle. It's a subtle notion sort of taken for granted, and you do find that referred to even in works of literature and so forth. I know that in Arabic it's the case, but in Arabic you also do find contrary as well. So you do find references to people who are black and stuff like that, and people, some of the poets, some of the old Arab poets would discuss about, you know, how they were infatuated with women who are black as well, and these kind of things. But you do still find within many cultures and traditions, they do have this notion where they do exalt that which is lighter. Is it all necessarily just to do with colonialism? I don't think it is. Because I also heard that even in the Indian subcontinent as well, there's also a notion and tradition which is sort of prevalent as well. That maybe, and it's reinforced. Maybe it's also reinforced within art, literature. Poetry and so forth. There's an aspect. So if we're being totally honest, if we're saying that it's only just due to colonialism, I really don't believe it is.
I think look, from the Indian subcontinent experience, right, from the cultural aspect, or from subcontinent, I suppose. Yes, I would argue that the vast majority, it's not the only thing, of course, but the vast majority certainly has been taken from the times of empire and colonialism. That's my argument, or modern day argument, right? Of where they've.
I don't think some of it could come from Hinduism as well, and notions to do with Varna.
Prior to
in India, those who are like largely at the bottom of the caste are usually the darker skin, like the Dalits, and the darker skinned Indians. So is it all necessarily just to do with colonialism? I don't think it is, to be honest. I will tell you.
Well, okay, let me quantify my statement here. So the vast majority in the modern context, I would argue, it is because of the colonial experience. However, what I was going to say was, even prior to the British coming, the British Empire, there was this concept, as you mentioned, within Hinduism and tribalism and this caste system. There was, you have the Dalits at the bottom, like you mentioned, who happen to be darker, and then you have at the top the Brahmins, who are were usually lighter skinned, and still are to some extent. So yes, there was certainly traits of that from the caste system. Now, is it because of racism? Most likely, there's arguments to suggest that it was grounded in racism and this idea of colorism. But there are also arguments that the reason why the Dalits at the bottom were darker in skin, and not because of racism necessarily, but also because of the trade that they had, because the caste system is based upon your trade. So their work was generally outside. Their work was generally even indentured laborers, or laborers outside in the fields all the time, doing the worst types of work in the baking sun. But regardless of that, it is another argument to the coin. But regardless of that, yeah, no doubt there is, even prior to British colonialism, you'll find this issue of colorism. However, in modern times, I don't think that majority of people link it back to their caste system. I think it's because of the language and the concepts that were exasperated and taught to them during British Empire, where the modern day understandings of this come from, where it's grounded in. That would be my argument. And the problem that we have is, either way, it's certainly not Islamic. It certainly is not found in Islam. So both, regardless which way you look at it, they both oppose the Islamic tradition. That's my point. So even if you take it from prior to British Empire and you put it into the caste system argument, fine, okay, no problem. There is definitely some issues around that, and there certainly has been historically, no doubt about that. But is that, if you look at the issue of today, when an Asian person says, even Muslim Asians, when a Pakistani parent says, oh, no, you can't marry her, she's too dark, yeah? Or when a Bangladeshi parent says, you know, oh, she's really fair-skinned for a Bangladeshi, she's really beautiful, yeah? I really don't think that it's because of the caste system issue. I really don't
I disagree with you. I think that's really due to intrinsic notions of what are defined as aesthetics. What is defined as aesthetically pleasing is based upon something which is culturally informed. And I do believe that these cultural things, obviously, they go back to. I don't think that's due to colonialism. Double Tayeb. I think that goes back to whatever the cultural notions of aesthetics and how they've developed, and from their respective countries. To be honest, that's what is apparent to me. I don't think that's anything to do with colonialism, because if it was, then there would be a strong emphasis on looking up to and wanted to be part of, you could say, the white European world view and culture, and that's not happening. All it is just like it's these aesthetic preferences. I'd definitely say they're rooted in certain cultural traditions, and nothing to do with colonialism and slavery. From my perspective, that's what I think is evident.
Well, Abdul-Haq's got someone on his side. Muslim BB is agreement with you.
Abdul-Haq, but I'm gonna make another point here, and I'm gonna argue that again. I'm gonna say no. Actually, I think it is, because it comes back to that same point we were making earlier of that superiority complex, looking up to the British when they came to India, thinking that they're better than us, they're more superior to us, they are more civilized than us, we should be more like them. And we're not just talking about being more like them in terms of ideology and their religion and their culture and their background, but even also color of skin. I think it has a profound impact on that we want to be like. Let me give you an example. Let me give you another example. In Pakistani men, right, they have this thing about having the mustache only, right? They have a very famous saying, it's the the emphasis on being a man is by having the mustache, right? Where did they get these ideas from, that the mustache is somehow beautiful, or the mustache is something which is more manliness and more manhood? Where did they get this from? They got it from because many of the Brits that came over from the empire, especially the generals and the colonels, etc., all had mustaches, right? They wanted to be like them because that was seen as being progressive, being forward-thinking, being part of the superior way, right? So it was emulating the people, or trying to be basically trying to be something that you're not, right?
But doesn't the caste system predate colonialism?
Sorry?
Doesn't the caste system predate colonialism?
Of course it does, yeah. No doubt.
Maybe that came afterwards and just added to it. So maybe like you're both right, even though you're not arguing, but we've got people online who's like taking sides.
Let's move on.
In most people's cases, I would argue.
I didn't say that.
Are you, Jamaal? Do you team Abdul-Haq? Yeah.
No, I didn't say that. I said you're both right, because it predates the colonialism, but then colonialism, when it came, it just added to it. So in terms of what you mentioned with the mustaches and stuff like that, it was just a natural kind of progression that we still want to have. This is where we're going. This is because remember, white is the lightest of all of the caste, isn't it? So
at the same time, bro, AT, because if you go back to the history, there was a time this non-Muslim, they used to dress like us because we were that time in a high civilization. So people try to imitate us. Now we imitating them because whatever the reason is, it could be political, it could be environmental, it could be cultural. This time goes. Like there was a time people used to imitate us.
Very
Now,
true.
unfortunately, we're doing that.
Very true.
Mustas, these are the things.
And even Johnny, you've got a good example of this in Bangladesh, right? Because you've got this idea that people want to be Western, like you mentioned earlier on, and that's even leading to a rise in atheism as well.
Big time. Big time.
Explain
Let me
that.
tell you, yeah, let me tell you something on that, because my country, I truly believe, and I had a live show the other day, and one of the brother in Bangladesh, I tell them that I don't believe that one of any of my people, they are atheists because they study so much of philosophy, science, and they have intellectual issue. That's why they are atheists. No, they have inferiority complex. Number one. Number two, they have a disease of the heart. They want to follow their own desire and hawa. That's the one. And number two, because they see the Richard Dawkins, they see the Lawrence Krauss, they see Sam Harris. These people, because the people look up to them as like a god. So whatever they say, that must be true. That's what they thinking. They don't even read their book in the original language, which is English. They read that book in Bengali text, which is translated by someone very poorly. So they don't, half of the time they don't understand, but still they have to. It's like kind of fashion. Like, okay, the West are doing it, so we're gonna do that. Because of the globalization now, we have internet now, we have YouTube, Facebook, whatever is happening here, the same trade goes there, so they can see all the things. They think it's something cool, deny the God. That's why it's not like they actually believe there is no God. It's just inferiority complex, like 99% of the time.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think definitely it's a combination of various factors. Tariq is right. I think he's correct that, and also depends on the geography. So absolutely, 100%. But there is a okay, Jamal. There's some more comments. You want to just go through the comments first?
Yeah, Sister Hafsa bint Zamir says, as an Asian woman, I agree with Abdul-Haq. That is more associated with aesthetics and fairness is what is considered beautiful. I do not agree with this. Rather, it makes me mad.
Yeah, but on that point, hold on. Let me go on that point.
Isa
I
said
think
something.
my argument is going to still stand. What is the culture influenced by? Right? So there's again, it comes back to this white supremacism, I would argue, right? And this white superiority complex that white is right, and somehow every of beauty and ideas of what are we looking at in terms of standards of beauty? What is it based upon? It's based upon that colonized mindset. That's what I'm going to argue.
Okay,
Colonized mindset influences the culture.
Okay, let me mention another point, which backs up the argument I'm trying to say. Is I think a couple of weeks back we discussed, or it was last week, we mentioned about Rwanda, and we discussed when we spoke about Rwanda the role of the Belgians, Leopold and the brutal, savage iron fist that he implemented upon the people of Rwanda at the time, and Congo.
Congo, yeah.
But when the Belgians, they were also in Rwanda. Now I studied this when I was at university. Actually, wrote an essay on this with regards to the Rwandan situation, the genocide, the roots of the Rwandan genocide, and the during colonialism, the differences between the Hutus and the Tutsis, definitely they were exacerbated by the colonialists, I think the French or the Belgians, I think. However, within the national psyche and traditions of both peoples, there were certain assumptions. Oh, the Tutsis, they are taller. They've got more aquiline features. There wasn't necessarily notion about they were lighter, but they were taller, had more aquiline features. They were kind of the more noble cattle herders. These kind of things, and also the Hutus were more stocky build, shorter, stocky build. That's what I'm saying. They also had the Twa, which are a third ethnic group who were like more sort of smaller, more diminutive, sort of more associated with being pygmies. So between the three different ethnic groups, they did have already within their own traditions, within their own cultural references, they did have certain factors which sort of differentiated themselves from the other. Yes, this was exacerbated later in colonialism. That did happen because that was done cynically as a political move, as was done during colonialism, divide and conquer. So that was what was done cynically. It was exacerbated. But what I'm saying is that there was already a basis and a foundation upon which to build and exaggerate, emphasize those differences further. There was already something there within their own culture.
Mm. Yeah, I think I don't disagree with that. I think that's correct.
Yeah.
And same with the Indian subcontinent. Look what Isa Khan's saying, Jamal.
Why is Isa Khan saying it on the type and not saying it in person? He should be on here.
That's the question.
He forgot that Pakistan has the same idea. He didn't mention Pakistan.
So what Isa's saying is Bangladesh and India are fair and lovely cream to make people get lighter skin. These ads are advertised everywhere, not just in the Indian subcontinent, but also in Africa as well.
Also in Pakistan.
Yeah.
Multi-million-pound industry. It's something which is it's been commercialized and capitalized. And this again goes back to my point. This is my point, that in the modern age today, I really think that the culture has been influenced more strongly by the colonialism and slavery, because again, it comes back to the same point of superiority complex. What standards of beauty are we trying to adhere to here? It's a standard of beauty that they're doing, and this notion was pushed by from the colonialists, the slave masters, etc. That white is more beautiful if you have the thinner nose, if you have straighter hair, if you have this type of feature, that type of feature, and in all of the advertising that you see, again with the fair and lovely creams, they will use the standard of beauty of the white European, right? Again, it comes back to the same issue. Not of the Brahmins. They're not using the Brahmins as the standard of beauty here. They're using what? The standard of beauty with the European, the white European, to say who's closer to that. That means you're more beautiful. This is my point. I think the old has a part to play in it, no doubt. But I think the culture has been more influenced from the concepts that we're listening to, that were enforced during the times of colonialism and slavery. That's just my view.
Well, it's interesting. We're loving them and heading towards them, and they're loving us and heading towards us. I want to show you a fantastic post that I saw on on Instagram today by someone. I'm going to show it to you. You should be able to see it, inshallah. Hold it close enough.
Yes, we can see.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's deep.
I was really touched by that, because this is a reality which we kind of we seem to be missing the point a lot. We miss the point a lot, and it is very infuriating. Definitely, it's infuriating. But so like you said, this skin lightening, this method, this culture that everyone's gotten into now.
Carcinogenic skin lightening, by the way.
Okay, can I jump in on this?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So, okay, it's true. There is a lot of that. However, on the flip side, brothers, is that there's also the notion of look at the tanning centers which have opened up. So hold on, let me finish. So although it's true, there is that. See, what it is, what we need to understand is the context. You see what I'm saying? So within Africa and Asia and then the Middle East, we do find this emphasis on sort of what is the aesthetic standard. In some parts, yes, is the notion of the lighter, the better. However, what's also developed in more recent years, particularly in Europe and the West, particularly among certain people who are European, is that their standard is not that. Their standard for some of them is to be browner, be brown and do all that they can in order to make themselves browner. And even one of the sheikhs wrote a book. One of the sheikhs from Yemen. He is one of the sheikhs from Yemen, Sheikh Yahya Hujuri. He came to UK in '98. And he wrote a book in Arabic called What I Witnessed. I think someone translated it, What I Saw in Britain. And he actually mentioned this fact as well in the book, that he said that, in England, the English are very white and they don't like it. So what they do, they stay out in the sun. And the way he was talking about it was good. It's like an Occidentalist. So he's like talking like, like in the past where you would read like the travelers, they would write about things, what they saw, what they witnessed. And he mentioned that aspect as well. So even though what you said is true, there is also the phenomenon of certain people also they want to be they want to be brown. And I dare someone said brown and not black, but even I would argue there's other things, not just the tanning centers. There are other things as well which will not probably be appropriate for us to discuss here. But there are other things as well which people are doing is also to bolster that, making them. One thing as well is the thing of some people they're using lip fillers.
Yeah.
In order to make their lips bigger.
Yeah.
Some people are using other fillers on other parts of the anatomy in order to make them more fuller. So although is there's also although is the one side that you mentioned, there's also the flip side as well, which is also being utilized to devastating effects and really harmful effects in parts of Europe and the West as well.
Can I add something here? Can I add something here?
One second,
bro.
Yeah, no, I want to correct something there. Yes, the white Europeans have tanning centers, but you'll notice their language. They don't say we want to be browner or blacker. They say we want to be tanned. Yeah.
No, some of them do say we want to be browner. Some of them actually do say.
I don't know about that.
I've heard that. I've heard that.
I don't know about that.
No, maybe you haven't heard that up in Northeast.
Yeah.
I've heard it in the South.
By the way, I've got on my Facebook, I've got another one who agrees. Says I agree with brother AT. Sister Yasmin Hijabinator. So update that scoreboard, guys.
MashaAllah. Bro, 80, bro. I need to add something on that, yeah? So what I was going to say, like the standard that we have for the beauty, bro. If we follow that, if we were to follow that, then half of the humanity will be depressed, bro. Like just you have to have a certain shape and looking this way, then only you count as a beautiful. That's a dangerous thing. So half of the humanity will be like really in severe depression. Like for me, that if I don't look like Jamaal Bhai is strong, then I'm like I have no meaning of my life. So I'm just gonna be like depressed. So that's why if you look at the beauty of Islam, subhanallah, Allah says Allah looks into your heart, not your physical appearance. This body is a vehicle to journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's brothers and sisters, let's not forget
the Prophet said, "Inna Allah yanzuru ila surikum wa ajsamikum, walakin yanzurun ila a'malikum." Or kama qala. The Prophet said he doesn't look into your shapes and your forms, but he looks into your.
This is it, because after 70 years, this is gonna be like you're gonna be under the 6 feet more than you've been alive. So this body is a vehicle to go to your Rob. Forget the physical beauty. Look at the internal beauty. That's how we judge people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a couple more comments on mine. Sister Yasmin, she says, having a tan and bigger lips doesn't mean that they want to change their ethnicity or be like the other ethnicity. Because again, it's a standard of beauty that's been pushed by the media or celebrities or whatever. Jamaal, there's a couple of comments here by Tariq.
Yep.
He says, if we can put that one up there.
Yeah. He says, I think also promotion of stereotypes in the media plays a role in pushing a certain perspective. Examples like Mansa Musa are barely mentioned outside of academic study circles.
Yeah.
Very true. Yeah. Very good point. I mean, many people haven't really heard of him, and you know what he, you know, the wealth that he had, and you know the library that he possessed, and you know no one has a clue. And this is one of the things that is usually kept from also, you know, like young black children growing up, and so the only understanding they have of their past is you know, one of slavery, and you know, so yeah, I mean, it's true, these things are definitely kept in the background.
Comments,
yeah. Also, Sister Hafsa, again, what upsets me is that there are people putting themselves at actual risk in terms of health in order to fit into the stereotype. Like that presentation during our Black History Month tour, where we saw a lady being wrapped in cling film, where we were told she could suffocate and die. Why are people risking their lives for this?
Crazy. Absolutely crazy.
She goes on to say, the darker you are, the lighter you want to be. The lighter you are, the darker you want to be. What does this say about humans and the dissatisfaction in how we were made or created?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. That's a good point, because as we discussed yesterday, we mentioned where Allah says, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. Allah says that He created mankind in the best stature. All people, whether you're Polynesian, whether you're Oriental, whether you're from the Indian subcontinent, whether you're whether you're black, whether you're white, that we're all created by Allah in the best stature.
Hmm.
And also we also created as tribes. Why? لِتَعَارَفُوا إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُم. That we created Allah, so He created us as tribes and nations, so that we would get to know one another, and that the best of you in the sight of Allah is the most pious. So yeah, these are the principles and the standards which should be emphasized. But what Jamal mentioned about also about the in the black community, black diaspora as well. We could say the black diaspora as well. It's replete full of inferiority complexes as well, especially with regards to the position of Africa, where you get some who say yes, I'm African. Some people from for instance the Caribbean will say that, but then you get some who say no way, total denial. That ain't even anything to do. That ain't even got. I've even met even brothers who actually totally deny that even got even any a drop of. One brother said to me, "I haven't got a drop of African blood in me."
Are you serious?
Yeah. So this is again. You also find it even unfortunately within the black diaspora. Inferiority complex to do with Africa, and I think it's to do with maybe the position of Africa, how it's presented. It's maybe presented as being very negatively. So it's only in especially like in certain parts of the black diaspora, there's only certain you could say certain movements which kind of really emphasized and extolled sort of the position of Africa, really, to be honest. But in terms of like the sort of common masses, there's a lot of ignorance with regards to Africa itself as well.
Let's finish off with this comment. I think we passed it by brother, but not that comment. Steak. After my steak and society, in my mind's talking about steaks being well done and stuff. Yeah. What about this one? Yeah, by brother Tariq. What are some of the effective Islamic methods to diffuse rooted colorism and enrich a sense of merit-based worth? I think that's a good way to. That question is a good way to finish the show and give the Islamic perspective. Johnny touched upon it already. Jazakallah khair for that. Johnny made probably the best point of the show tonight. Yeah, with that comment. But let's finish off on this one. Let's finish off on a very positive note and explain what the Islamic method is to deal with these issues of colorism and look at a sense of merit-based worth. Abdul-Haq, give us an update on this one, inshallah.
Yeah, this feeds into what we discussed yesterday as well, doesn't it? We mentioned about this yesterday. Effective Islamic methods to diffuse. I think is what we discussed it before, which was first of all of us, all human beings, regardless of color, we were all created for a purpose. We all created. Allah says He created us in the best stature. You see what I'm saying? Regardless, and our colors are neither here or there, and we were created with our different colors to get to know one each other. Not that we should hate each other, but rather that to recognize one another. You see what I'm saying? So that's important to emphasize. And also that we're all brethren. Whether we could be from this part of the world or that part of the world, we're all brethren. We're all brothers and sisters, regardless of that. You see what I'm saying? And it's whether it's the amount of piety and God consciousness, which is going to be the key determining factor when we die. We're not going to be asked about what tribe we're from. We're not going to be asked about when we die. We're not going to be asked about what color skin we are. We're not going to be asked about these frivolous things. You see what I'm saying? That's not going to be the main criteria in the hereafter. You see what I'm saying? Which is where we're all going soon. You see what I'm saying? That's where we're heading there soon, and that's not the key determining factor. So there's other solutions. I'd say definitely to emphasize that it's all different. Allah created us with this difference. You see what I'm saying? The beautiful ayah in Surah Al-Anbiya, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, and from His signs is the creating of the heavens and the earth. وَإِخْتِلَافَ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ وَأَلْوَانِكُمْ, and the difference in your languages and colors. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لِآيَاتٍ لِلْعَالِمِينَ, indeed in there are signs for the worlds. You see what I'm saying? All of this, there are signs for the worlds. You see what I'm saying? There's these are things to emphasize. And like the Prophet said, that there's no virtue over black over white, or white over black, or non-Arab over an Arab, or Arab over non-Arab, except in one thing, which is taqwa. See what I'm saying? And the Prophet also mentioned, "Bu'ithtu ila kulli aswadin wa ahmar." I was sent to every black and red, meaning he was sent to all peoples, regardless of their color. So all of these things, the Prophet emphasized it as well. You see what I'm saying? But unfortunately, people are leaving this and going towards bringing notions which are ignorant notions. See what I'm saying? Jahiliyyah. See what I'm saying? This is like the rule of Jahiliyyah. Hukm Jahiliyyah yabghun. Is it the rule of Jahiliyyah that they want? See what I'm saying? So these are the things which we need to emphasize, and also to counter any ignorance that we come across. I've done that before. There's a lot of ignorant things I've heard. And one of the scholars, Shanqiti, rahimahullah, in his tafsir, Adwa al-Bayan, he brings some excellent points with regards to this, where he mentions, even in the past, some people of knowledge, they made some statements which could be construed as being kind of, let's say, colorist or racist statements. Shanqiti, in his tafsir, rahimahullah, he mentions these statements. He said that these are totally is incorrect for anyone to have these views. It goes against the practice of the Prophet ﷺ, he mentions. The practice of the Prophet ﷺ. You see what I'm saying? And he also mentions in his tafsir, like he refutes the notion about how like even there's a view, it's a shadh view, a regular view. Where one scholar actually said that a black woman doesn't need a wali because she's intrinsically lowly and ugly, so she doesn't need a wali. Yeah. So Shanqiti in his tafsir, he demolishes that void view, and he says this is absolutely incorrect because, and he emphasizes that beauty effectively is in the eye of the beholder, and then he brings forth and he mentions how some of the poets, Arab poets of the past, would be enthralled and infatuated with women who are black, and he mentions that, and he mentions it in his tafsir. He mentions the poetry of those people in it to show that that essentially beauty is in the eye of the beholder. What could be one person's preference? That there could be what you like, brother. That's not like what another person likes, brother. You see what I'm saying? Or sister. You see what I'm saying? So these are things which are important to notice. But mashallah, our ulama, they've dealt with these things, as we mentioned as well yesterday, with regards to these points. We're going to get to that when we start looking at other issues as well. But that's a good indication of you see what I'm saying? Because why the Prophet only mentioned that the ulama warithat al-anbiya, that the scholars, that they are the inheritors of the prophets, and we see in this way how the scholars are bringing, and emphasizing the true spirit of Islam and the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in dealing with all issues, and colorism being a case in point. Wallahu alam.
Jazakallah khair. Beautiful. Jamaal, you want to add anything else to that question?
No, that's beautiful. I don't. Yeah.
Johnny, anything else you want to add?
No, bro. That's all. Alhamdulillah.
Okay.
That's all.
One last comment to answer the question by Brother Tariq, by Sister Yasmin, which is education and challenging these issues are probably the best ways to deal with it, in answer to Brother Tariq's question. So I think that's a good way to wrap it up. We've got a lot of people who have appreciated this topic in particular. And I think that's the end of that. Let's wrap it up. Yeah. So Jamaal, your quick health advice, and we're gonna
very quick. And walaikum salam wa rahmatullah to brother Jalal, who is watching today as well. My tip today really is that everyone's gonna get down days when it comes to trying to maintain a good level of fitness and trying to stay fit. You're going to have those days where you just can't be asked, you just can't be bothered. It's not because you're feeling not well, it's not because of anything else. Maybe you're a little bit run down and you just can't be bothered. And, everyone can have those days. But if you start to find it is spreading over too many days, you just remind yourself that you're still eating food and you're not doing anything with that food. It's just like sitting there and it's going to sit around your waist. So pick yourself up and just get back onto it again. Get back to a routine of fitness, inshallah. Don't let yourself down. Because when you let yourself down, you start to spread, and when you start to spread, people start to notice. Trust me, people notice. Yeah. So inshallah, just fight your way through those down days and just get back to being fit, inshallah. That's just my tip for the day. Just a very quick one.
Jazakallah khair. Brilliant, excellent way to finish off. So let's wrap it up there. Tomorrow we're going to be back with Scotland. Brother Omar Bhatti is going to be with us tomorrow, inshallah. So we're going to be talking about the Muslimic invasion of Scotland tomorrow, inshallah. So with Omar Bhatti. So we'll be back then, inshallah. Jazakum Allah khair, everybody. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.